You're tuned in to the HBCU Nation Radio Show, and I'm your host, Anthony Ray. Thank you that you're joining the broadcast today. And we're blessed to be here live at Thurgood Marshall College Fund's 17th Annual Leadership Institute with President and CEO Johnny Taylor. Hey, Johnny, welcome back to the show, man. Appreciate you joining the broadcast.
So glad to be here on this Sunday afternoon. Everything's beautiful. We got beautiful weather this
Yes.
week. Things are good. Thank you.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And again, kind of an honor to have been invited to come and to provide coverage. Things are going well. I am just so incredibly impressed with the caliber of students that are here, see the corporate sponsors that are here, and your team taking care of us, man. I tell you, man, what a blessing it is to be here with you.
Well, it was a blessing that you all came out. And, you know, this is, as you and I have talked a lot, this is what we've got to showcase is
Right.
all of the positive energy and the stories that are that exist about HBCUs. Too often it's all the negativity, like what's wrong with HBCUs, and we don't celebrate our successes. So right now we've got the students here. We've got, to your point, corporate America, major industry, federal government agencies, all here looking to hire HBCU graduates.
That's
So I'm
awesome.
really excited about it.
And the kids are too.
Yeah, I
You know,
bet
I've
they
been
are.
talking with them and sharing with them, and they are so incredibly excited. So let's take a time and just look at the whole key thing, the mission, the role, what you hope to be able to accomplish in this year's institute, the theme for this year, et cetera, et cetera. So let's kind of just give us the quick layout on what's been happening here in the conference.
So three things really happen. The
Right.
conference is made up of, first and foremost, the Leadership Institute, where we actually provide leadership development for all of these young people. You know, the schools do a wonderful job of teaching the reading, writing, arithmetic, and all of the algebra and the sciences and everything that they need to know to have the skills to go to the workplace.
Right.
But then we've got to teach them the unwritten rules, the rules of corporate America, the rules of engagement. See, they've spent all of their lives, 12 under high school, elementary, middle school, and then another 4 or so in college, 16 years learning how to be a student. What we haven't done is taught them how to go to the workplace. And so that's what we try to do here, is to level the playing field with our students, many of whom are first generation.
Right.
And we do that through the Leadership Institute. That's the training and professional development. The second phase is the job fair.
Right.
That's when, and let me be more specific, it's
Okay.
a career fair,
Yes.
not just a job. But
Gotcha.
we're trying to put our students on track for executive level roles. The third thing that we do is the gala.
Right.
1,700 of my closest friends are coming to Washington,
Wow,
D.C.
that's awesome. 1,700.
1,700
I understand we're sold out. Yes.
$1,000 a plate,
Wow, that's
$1,000,
major,
okay?
man.
And
That's
it
major.
is just amazing. And that's where we're going to celebrate leaders. We're going
Right.
to celebrate our students. We're going to celebrate HBCUs. So that's, 4 or 5 days of that.
Right.
Just it's Match.com on steroids,
Yes,
right?
yes.
We're matching students
Wow.
and employers and everyone. And then we're going to celebrate Monday night.
Wow, so much energy here.
Yes.
A great looking bunch.
Don't they look good?
yeah,
I'm so proud of
exactly,
them every
yeah.
time I see them coming
yeah,
through.
Absolutely. And we had an opportunity to speak to several of them, and we really appreciate that. And also some of the corporate sponsors, and it was just when we can't do things without them. And and I understand that Wells Fargo is your presenting sponsor this year.
Wells Fargo's been with us now for all of my 7.5 years here.
Wow.
And each year they get stronger and stronger, their relationship. But what I think is important for the audience to hear is that this isn't just them writing a check for sponsorship. They don't show up and put their brand all over everything.
Right.
They bring people here to hire our students.
Right.
And see, that's the gotcha, if
Yes,
you will.
yes.
Going to school, getting through school is all nice, but if that diploma doesn't translate into what a good job,
Right.
then it's all for naught. Wells Fargo, John Deere,
Yes.
Walmart, I mean, some high-end companies, Google's here, Apple's here.
Wow.
They're looking for talent. So
Yes.
it's not enough for major corporations to simply write a check and say, okay, check, we're committed to diversity. The key is for them to hire our graduates in internships and full-time jobs, because that says HBCUs matter today.
Wow. And I was talking with the group from Miller Coors.
Yes.
And they are just so excited, and everyone's doing interviews, and they really look towards this conference as serving as an HBCUs as a major pipeline for individuals that they want to hire.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Miller Coors. Miller
Right.
Coors brings like 15 people here. I
Right.
mean, they bring it in, and what people don't realize is what was then the Miller Brewing Company was a founding partner, of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. This entity would not exist but for Miller Brewers. And now they're Miller Coors,
Right.
and Molson Coors,
Sure.
and they've been bought and sold and merged.
right.
But through all of that,
They're
they
from the
continue
beginning.
to be a major funder, and most importantly, they're here to interview our students for jobs.
Wow, you know, I was really humbled, and I get goosebumps thinking about it right now. I got a chance to actually talk to on several times, Dr. N. Joyce Payne,
Yes, our
founder. I was like,
founder.
oh my God, I had to collect myself just to get myself together,
Yes.
just to be in her presence, man. Tell us, what has that been like, man? Just to just working with her and carrying forth the vision that she had for TMCF from the very beginning.
You know, we often you hear the phrase living legend, and it's usually some celebrity basketball player or
Right.
some singer or some
Right.
television celebrity. There's nothing more exciting and satisfying than for me to meet a
Sure.
living legend and be able to work with her.
Wow.
You know, too often we don't give people their flowers until they're laying in a coffin,
Sure,
right?
right.
We celebrate her every day. Her vision
Wow.
for advocating for public HBCUs. There was, for all years, and appropriately so,
Right.
you know, 50 years before there was a UNCF
Right.
representing private HBCUs.
Right.
But it was her vision in
Yes.
1987 to say, you know, we need to do something for publicly supported HBCUs.
Right.
And it's just, to me, I'm kind of jealous. I tell
Right,
her all the
right,
time,
right.
you know, when I'm done on this journey called life, they'll be able to say I was a good this and a good that, but
Right.
no one will be able to talk about me the way they're going to talk about her, because she actually
Wow.
created something that will last way beyond, you know, her time here on the earth, or frankly my time here
Sure.
on earth. This is now an institution.
Wow.
The Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
If you're just joining us, you're tuned in to the HBC Nation Radio Show, and I'm your host, Anthony Ray, and we're blessed to have with us joining us for this segment our good friend, the president and CEO of Thurgood Marshall College Fund, Johnny Taylor. Again, Johnny, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Oh, it's just great to be here. It really is. Having a great time. And getting back to Dr. Payne again, just for a
Yes.
second and anything else. Again, so that the goosebump moments and all that. A living legend right here. We're living the dream. And when I was talking to her about the whole thing about Thurgood Marshall College Fund, she told me, she said, you know what, I was making calls, okay, for UNCF and all that. And she said, you know what, I thought about that thing. My institution is not a part of it. And what can I do about that? And she said, you know what, I decided to do something about it.
Yes.
And she talked to me about the day that she went to go see Justice Marshall himself.
That's history.
Wow, and I'm sure you've heard some stories about that. So kind of give us some perspective on what she shared with you about that time when she went to go actually talk to him and the whole thing.
So she told me, she said, you know, with all of the movies that we've seen in
Right.
this one stage plays and all of that.
And Marshall is out right now.
Marshall's out
Yes,
right,
right
now.
now.
It's
Go see it,
close.
everybody. Right.
She said he was that guy. He was kind of gruff.
Yeah.
She said, you know, it wasn't the feel good, come
Right.
in and sit
Sure,
down. She
right.
said, he was like, okay, what do you want?
Right.
Let's cut to the chase.
Right, exactly.
And she said she told him her vision.
Right.
And that's important, her
Right.
vision for this organization.
Right.
And she said, he then said, okay. And she said, she kept going because she
Right.
was like, it couldn't have been that easy,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And he said, I said, okay.
Right,
you
yeah,
know, you
right.
got it
You
now.
got it, right.
Go do it.
Wow.
But what's really, you know, if you think about the opportunity to sit in a
Yes,
room with someone
exactly.
like that, and frankly,
Sure.
now you had two living legends, because
Wow.
she didn't realize that he was passing the baton to her.
Wow.
You know, for all that Thurgood Marshall did,
Yes.
and it was wonderful as a member of the judiciary and using the courts, the next phase of the civil rights fight
Right.
was about education.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, that you can get technically
Sure.
the right to do anything.
Right.
But until you actually operationalize it, until you actually make education available to all, equally
Right.
high quality education,
Right.
it's all for naught. So the books
Wow.
are off, the laws are off the books that
Right.
prevent you from enrolling in those schools. But then what?
Right.
And that's what she did. She took that baton and said, okay, now I'm the next leg of this race.
Right.
And it's funny that we talk about what we're here for today at the Leadership Institute.
Right.
It's now our job to find that next Joyce Payne, that next Thurgood Marshall.
Right.
We've got to find that kid who's sitting in that room, hopefully today, dreaming about how they can really help change the trajectory of HBCUs and, in fact, the larger Black community.
Wow, that is so incredibly powerful, and you're absolutely right. Let's take a moment right now to reflect upon the last 7 years, from when you first arrived and where we are now and what's ahead and all that. just take a few minutes and take your time just to elaborate on things from your point of view and how you see things, because we understand we know that you've been with us now for 7 years.
7.5.
Yeah, 7.5. It's just,
Give me
technically,
every day of
every
credit.
day,
You're gonna make, 'cause
that's
I
right.
earned it.
7.5. and just back it up a minute and just walk us through and bring us up to where we are now and what you hope to see in the future.
So I've had to. We always use the end of the year to reflect,
Right,
but especially for me now, I came into the HBCU space at an interesting time. 2010, we'd elected the country's first African American president. We were going through trying to get ourselves back together after a bruising, I mean, absolute bruising economic meltdown.
Yeah.
We say white America had the cold, we had pneumonia.
Right. Exactly. That's right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
just keeping it
destroying
real.
our
It's sure,
families.
right. Wow.
And so you walk in, that's the backdrop of 2010 when I took over this organization, the leadership of this organization.
Right.
And it was scary. It was scary because there was just limited resources. We've talked about times when there have been some dark days for HBCUs, but let me tell you, the last 7 or 8 years have been very dark for HBCUs.
Wow.
Dark because, and let me just put it in
Sure.
3 buckets.
Right, okay.
First of all, increasingly, Black students aren't choosing HBCUs.
Right.
Black families
Right.
aren't. We've turned our own backs on our own institutions.
schools. Wow.
And so we're at a point now, tragically, where only 8% of African Americans enrolling in college are enrolling on HBCU campuses.
Right.
That frankly
Right.
has nothing to do with the white man.
Right.
'Cause
Exactly.
that's your
right.
choice.
That's
where
not
you
that
go
we're
to school,
doing.
right?
Some of us may be
Right.
HBCU parents, and our kids,
Vast
I know we
majority,
got the
okay?
choice, but
So,
8%. Wow.
8%.
Yeah.
So that's just one fact.
Sure.
The second fact that really, the bad economy did such damage on the families' abilities to contribute to their children's education. You see, before 2008, you could take out a home equity loan and help
That's
your
right.
kid go to college.
Sure.
Right?
That's right.
Well, wake up 2010. Black families are losing their homes.
Right.
They've lost their jobs.
Right.
Divorces are occurring. The kids want to get a second job, but
Right.
mama can't get a first job.
Right.
So,
Good
right.
God
So when
almighty.
you put all of that together, there are
Right.
huge financial pressures on the students
Right.
and the institutions.
Right.
And then thirdly, there was such division in this country about generally race
Right,
issues.
right.
So I walk into this place in 2010, and there's a big question mark about the continued relevancy of HBCUs.
That's true. That's right.
That's
exactly.
it.
That was the question.
And
right.
as much as people, every once in a while you hear it, what I'm pleased to say to you today in 2017, almost 18, is
Right.
you don't hear that question as much anymore.
That's right. That's right.
If we've achieved nothing else, it's that's no longer the question. We've talked people off of that ledge.
Right.
And so when I reflect back on the last 7.5 years, and while they've had their bumps and everything's not been great, at the end of the day, there are conversations occurring. Someone was asking me about all of the Kaepernick stuff and
Right.
all of the NFL players kneeling and everything. One of the upsides to this, and I'm hoping
Right.
that this translates into a renaissance of sorts for HBCUs, is that all of these folks who claim to be woke
Yes.
in our
I got
community,
you. Right.
I want to see.
Right.
So are you really woke?
Right.
Are you considering HBCUs? Are
Right.
you giving to HBCUs time and treasure?
Right.
Okay. Because that's a little frustrating. Is we created the middle class. We
Right.
created the black professional class, and so NFL players, NBA players, whomever out there, if you're
Right.
so interested in the black community, then I want to see you contribute your time and your money to HBCUs. That to me will say that these last 7.5 years mattered. Kneeling is important,
Right.
but ultimately, what do you do next? Stand up and do something about it.
Wow. If you're just joining us, you're tuned in to the HBC Nation Radio Show. I'm your host, Anthony Ray, and joining us for this segment is our good friend, Johnny Taylor, President and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Again, Johnny, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here.
Give us, if you will, your take on how we could best chart a course forward in the current political climate that we're operating in. Truth be told, man, you've done a wonderful job. Most of it kind of behind the scenes, helping to kind of, quite frankly, hold things together.
Yes, sir.
Okay, more than most folk really realize.
That's right.
Because quite frankly, being very candid about it. In the current climate, some folk just want to not even come, to Washington or sit at the table, the whole 9 yards and all that. But you have encouraged us to stay engaged. Resistance is okay,
That's right.
but stay engaged. Okay.
That's right.
How important is that, Johnny?
Well, it's everything. First
Right.
of all, you've got to listen.
Right.
You've got to listen to people, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. That's
Right.
been part of the mantra. The other thing is you've got to sit down and convene with people. You've got to talk with them. You and I will never get anywhere if we
Right.
don't talk.
Right.
And so, to your point, a number of people in the community thought it was wrong, that the best approach was not to talk, to resist.
Right.
And those are the people who don't understand, frankly, that a significant, in some instances, up to 80% of a college's budget, an HBCU's budget, comes from state or federal government.
That's right.
Funding.
Wow, that's a lot.
So the idea that you cannot talk to them,
Right.
and that you somehow are going to hurt them,
Right,
they're
by not
six,
talking to them.
right, and
Right,
by not hurting
exactly,
them, that is
right.
naive. In
Right.
fact, you know, you might be playing into their game.
Right,
They might say,
interesting.
"I never
That's
wanted to
right.
fund you
Anyway,
anyway,
right.
and now you've given me the perfect excuse for not doing so."
Sure.
So I think, luckily, through frankly leadership, and it's not just me, it's a really solid group of HBCU presidents with a
Right.
vision.
Right.
And we have to keep our eyes on the prize, and the prize is student outcomes. That's why we're in the business that we're in. It's not about Johnny, it's not about president or chancellor so and so.
Right.
It's about what's in the best interest of our students, right?
Right.
I had a conversation the other day with the chancellor, and they were saying, I couldn't make myself go sit down and talk to those people in the White House,
My
in
gracious.
this White House, and
That's
blah,
pretty
blah, blah, blah,
scary.
blah.
Oh, my
And I
God.
said, well, let me help you with this. It's a really good idea
Right.
that back in the day, our ancestors didn't have that same attitude.
Right.
They had
Wow.
to serve those people who called them into their face. I said,
Wow.
but in spite of that, they had their eye on the
Yes.
big prize, and that is so that one day, we could have 1,700 students
Right.
up in the what?
Right.
Washington Marriott,
That's
Wardman
right.
Park,
That's right.
in a suite,
Right. Wow.
in their ballroom.
Wow.
So sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
That's
And
right.
I said I'm very fortunate to know that back in the day, those people didn't take some of the positions you're taking today. They knew racism.
They
They,
knew.
and it was real, live, outright, raw racism.
Wow.
But in spite of that, they did what they needed to do for future generations. We have got to do more of that. We've got to sit down and have the conversations. I want to tell you about something that happened just the other day. There was a big talk for those of us who are in the HBCU community, Title III.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which is a federal line. It is the lifeline for HBCUs. And frankly, shortly afterwards, this administration had decided to take a shift, this
Right.
being the Trump administration, and they called it had to do with rollover of federal funds, more than you want to get into. But at the end of the day, there was $100 million or more sitting in a federal pot of unused Title III funding from
Wow.
HBCUs that they were just going to wipe out.
Wow.
And technically had the legal right to wipe
Do
it out.
so. Right.
Because we were able to pick up the phone, call Secretary DeVos, the
Right.
one you booed, the
Right.
one you told not to
That's
come to your
right.
school, that one.
Right.
She convened a meeting. We sent a letter, UNCF, NAFIO, Thurgood Marshall College Fund
Right.
sent a letter on Wednesday. By Friday
Right.
morning, we were sitting in the office, Secretary of Education's office, and they were saying, we made a mistake, help us understand how we can fix it. They grandfathered our schools in.
Wow.
That doesn't occur if you don't have a relationship. If you
That's
just
right.
don't talk to them, then they wipe the money out. And so what? Someone said to me, well, they wouldn't want to do that to us. We only gave them 7% of our vote.
Right.
Why do you think they care at the end
Right,
of the day?
exactly.
You
That's
ain't
right.
going to vote for
That's
them
the
anyway.
reality.
The
Right.
reality is,
Right.
if they were looking at this practically speaking, they could have taken that $100 million, shifted it to Hispanic serving institutions,
Right.
by the way,
Right.
where they received 30% of that vote.
Right.
And nobody would have known the difference.
Exactly.
You've got to engage people. We've got to find common ground and do what's in the best interest of our schools and our students.
Your take on having Dr. Leonard Hayes back over there, serving as Undersecretary Education as a special counsel, man. How important is that?
He is, you talk about another living legend.
Right.
He knows his way around that Department of Education. I say he's outlived so many secretaries.
Right,
until,
right, sure.
And that's what we were just talking to the presidents the other day about
Right.
the importance of that. The secretaries come in, in the case of Secretary DeVos, she didn't know
Right.
anything about
Right,
higher ed,
sure,
and that's
right.
not a knock of her.
Exactly,
She
right,
just
exactly.
doesn't,
That's-
right?
right,
Her
exactly.
focus is K through 12
Right,
education
right,
largely,
that's
right?
Right.
So someone has to be there in her ear telling her about the importance of HBCUs.
Right.
And so for people who say, well, I don't know why he's doing that job.
Right.
He worked for Barack Obama.
Sure.
HBCUs have to live under Republican or a
Right.
Democratic president.
Exactly.
And so fortunately, we have someone like him who is sensitive to the issues, who's authentically in touch with his African-American lineage and experience, who can represent us. I think, I don't know specifically
Right.
how involved Dr. Hayes was
Right.
in this whole thing, but I
Right.
would tell you that having people like him there is
Right.
far better than having no one there.
Right. It makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Big difference.
Wow. Hey, listen, gosh, I was really excited to hear the news about the development and launch of the Center of Advanced Opportunity.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit and how excited you are about that, particularly to have the support of Koch Industries.
Yes. So
Right.
the Center for Advancing Opportunity was created by a $26 million gift from Charles Koch and the Koch Foundation.
Right.
Charles Koch Foundation.
Right.
And even Koch Industries. Everyone was
okay,
in it.
right,
But the
right.
idea is we've got to figure out what would differentiate HBCUs from other higher educational institutions. I
Right.
mean, listen, MIT does what it does in engineering. UCLA does what it does in business. Stanford does what it does in the Tech Valley. Everyone has something that distinguishes them from the other 5, 6, 7,000 schools around the country.
Right.
Higher educational institutions. So what we were trying to do is figure out what can black schools do really well that perhaps no one else can do. And that is help identify those problems and the barriers that exist in what we call fragile communities. People live in those communities, but the communities are fragile because they have an unusually high participation rate in the criminal justice system,
Right.
unusually low performing K through 12 schools, and entrepreneurship essentially doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, there was a time when we had black neighborhoods and black doctors and black bankers and black
Right.
stores.
Right.
That doesn't exist anymore to speak of.
Right.
So we said, what group of institutions are better positioned to figure out why they've gone away, and more importantly, how we can bring them back than HBCUs. The students are from those fragile communities, the professors are from those fragile communities, and many of the schools sit in those fragile communities. So we went to Mr. Koch and came up with this concept of let's set up a research center, not do this based upon anecdotal, what I think is happening in the black community
Right.
or what our latest civil rights leader says is wrong with the black community. Let's talk to the black community. Let's ask them, what are the problems? What are the barriers that if we removed them would unleash the power of our community? And so we created it, launched it in January of 2017, again with $26 million.
Right.
And he told me, that's the beginning.
Right.
You all
Wow.
get this right, and there's
Right.
more and more resources.
Wow.
Because what I've learned is, you know, these folks want this to work.
Oh, yeah.
America
Oh,
is graying and browning at once.
Right.
They realize that this country will not be successful unless brown people are successful.
Wow.
Right? So
Right.
this is an investment
Yeah, he totally
in this
gets it.
community. This
Right.
isn't a donation.
Right. Gotcha.
Right?
Big difference.
There's a big difference. He
right.
wants this thing to pay off in dividends that will help us figure out how to make sure that our children have all of the opportunities in the world.
Wow.
Key there, though,
Right.
is it's about the opportunity for success.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're guaranteeing success.
Right.
Ultimately, the person has to come out and decide that
Right.
success matters to them, and they're going to do the hard work that it takes to achieve that success. But we're going to remove all of those barriers with evidence. We're going to have scientific research that says do this, and it will remove barriers for Johnny so that Johnny can be Mr. Johnny, right?
I got you. Now, I saw that you granted Winston-Salem State University recently the grant, and a little bit quickly about that and what it's going to mean to moving forward with CAO.
So Winston-Salem State University, one of our member schools down in North Carolina, was the first grantee. $3 million we gave them.
Right.
And what we want them to study entrepreneurship in what is really a fragile community. There's
Right.
a really interesting dynamic that's going on. It's literally one side of the the train track versus the other side. I said racetrack, that's
Right,
funny,
right,
right?
gotcha, right,
I know
gotcha,
in my
yeah,
mind
right,
is.
right,
But
right.
one side of the train track, we see this sort of economic development occurring in that town, and the other side, it doesn't. And we want to understand what's going on there because we think it is a microcosm of the rest of so many small towns. I'm sorry, medium-sized and even
Right,
larger
yeah.
towns in America.
Right.
Why is it that the Loop in Chicago is as successful as it is, but when you go south of it or west of it,
Right.
you don't enjoy that same success?
Right.
There's something that's happening
Right.
in that particular community that we need to break down. So, Winston-Salem State University's president met with us, their provost.
Dr.
we have-
Robinson.
Yes, Dr. Robinson had an amazing professor
Right.
say, I want to go study this, and we're going to use our learnings right here in this town to advance the work for the rest of the country. So very excited to be a part of giving $3 million to our schools.
Wow, that is so exciting. What would you characterize be some of the major obstacles or challenges that we're facing in the HBCU community, and how should we move forward to make sure that we address that challenge or those obstacles right now in this moment? You know, what are you most concerned about the challenge that we're facing that we may not realize,
Right.
that we're actually dealing with. Because typically speaking, as you said before earlier, we've been relying upon receiving federal and state money, that kind of thing. It's 80% of what we do and all of that. Yeah. What ought we be focused on that concerns you about that it appears that we're not aware of, if you will?
Two things that, and it's really that simple.
Right.
First is innovation.
Right.
And not, it's a word that we use a lot, but higher education is being disrupted in a big way.
Right.
And it's not just black higher education.
Right.
It's
In
all
general.
of higher education.
Sure. Right.
Purdue University just bought Kaplan, a
Wow.
for-profit school. So
Wow.
while we were busy saying, poo-pooing the for-profits and they're not real institutions,
Wow.
they're diploma mills.
I didn't hear about that.
Purdue University
Get outta here.
announced the acquisition
Right.
of Kaplan,
Wow.
a for-profit
Yeah,
school.
right. Wow.
And if you recall, years ago, we tried to talk. We were the one that Thurgood Marshall College
Right.
Fund pushed the
Right.
idea of partnership with the University of Phoenix.
Wow.
And all of our schools said
Yeah,
nobody
Rosa,
would do
no.
that.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
one would do
exactly.
that. Well,
Wow.
guess what?
Yeah. See.
Someone did.
Right.
And a top 25 ranked school like Purdue,
Right.
top engineering school in
Sure.
the country,
The Boilermakers.
did.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's what we've got to do is
Right.
we've got to start thinking differently. Higher education has changed. It is not the higher education system that we knew of the 70s, of the 60s. Hell, it's not the same one of the 90s.
That's right.
It is changing. That's number one.
Right.
And people who want to live in the past are going to lose this game. They're not. They're just
Wow.
going to lose it. So then the second area, and we all know this, but it continues to amaze me what we're not willing to do about it. It's leadership. Board leadership and presidential leadership. If we don't figure that out, we're going to be out of business. And I mean, that's just real.
Wow.
This is increasingly, states look at us as an investment. Not we should do this because the black students need a place to go to school, because guess what? Black students are going to school. They're just not coming to our school.
That's right.
Okay. Donors are saying, if I put this money into XYZ HBCU, I expect a return on that investment.
Right.
In terms of people coming out and working in my company or being tax-paying citizens, etc.
Right.
We have got to think about what is the major impediment to HBCU success, and it's who we choose to lead our institutions, either who we put on our board or who the full-time CEO or president is. I keep saying it. We all know it's a challenge, but we continue not to do anything about it in meaningful ways. There are random exceptions where we go in and a board does it the right way, but the turnover is unacceptable in HBCU world. This year we had 17, 18 openings. That just, there's no way. The average tenure is like 2.5, 3 years.
Wow.
You don't even graduate the class that you
Sure.
brought in.
Oh,
if you bring a
gosh.
freshman class
Wow.
in, hell, you can't graduate them for 4 or 5 years. So if the
Right.
president switches twice during my tenure, it affects alumni loyalty,
Right.
alumni giving,
Right.
graduation rates,
That's right.
staff turnover.
Major
So
stakeholders concerned about
everything.
making that investment.
So those two areas, brother,
Right.
if we have got to figure out our governance and our
Right.
leadership,
Exactly.
and then
But what's going on with that? Well, why are we facing so much transition and turnover? I mean, what do you step back and look at that? What's contributing to that, you think?
disruption,
Right,
disruption on all fronts, disruption because again, as we've said,
Right.
here's a really startling fact. I was at a meeting. Georgia State University, Georgia State,
Right.
sitting in the middle of Atlanta,
Right.
has 51,000 students.
Good God Almighty.
41% of them are black, not people of color.
Right.
Black. They have 20,000 black students in the middle of Atlanta on their college campus. Guess what? That is more students than Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta combined. Combined.
Right.
So what does that tell you? That tells you that the competition, the new game, is
Right.
not the other HBCU. It's not Howard or Hampton. It's
Right.
Howard, Hampton, or Georgia State.
Right.
Right? And the other thing about Georgia State and many of these institutions is they're able to do it a lot more cost effectively because they
Right.
don't charge private school tuition.
Right.
They're not $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. They're
Right.
$5,000 to $6,000 a year.
Right.
And so what we're coming into, and they're graduating them, by
Right.
the way. That's a whole nother
Right.
issue,
Sure.
too.
Right.
So this is like the perfect storm where every time we scream bloody murder that we want these colleges to be more diverse, more
Right.
diverse faculty, more
Right.
diverse in their students, where do you think they're getting them from?
Wow.
Right?
Right.
You got to be careful what
Sure.
you pray for.
Exactly. That's true.
Everybody
That's
was
right.
last year in the news, University of Missouri needs to be more diverse.
Right.
Let me tell you how they're going to do it. They're
Right.
going to go pull some of our
Right.
black HBCU
Right.
faculty. They're going
Exactly.
to pull our black HBCU leaders.
Right.
And most importantly, they're going to recruit our students.
Wow.
And then we're going to be left with what? So I don't know. Diversity is a two-edged sword in some ways. While we want
I'm
these
more concerned about
opportunities,
inclusion.
right? Inclusion is far
Exactly.
far better
That's
one,
bottom-
right?
that's bottom line.
But
Yeah.
that's what's happening. There's a shrinking, and then I've talked really macroeconomically speaking. Americans just had fewer babies.
Right. That's true.
We
too.
have an
Right.
enrollment crisis that we have never. People are sleeping on this,
Right.
But there are simply going to be fewer people enrolling in college because fewer kids are graduating from high school, and they say,
Right.
"Oh yeah," but
Right.
you just go to a more non-traditional student, an older student. Well, let me tell you how that disrupts the business. Non-traditional students don't need dorm rooms.
Right.
They don't need
That's
cafeterias.
right. That's
They don't
right.
need those things that
Right.
have actually been part of the business model
Right.
of the old college,
Right.
right?
Right.
So all of this is changing, and we just have got to look at this and be far more intentional. The business of higher education has been disrupted and will continue to be disrupted.
Wow, interesting. Let's wrap this up. Tell me, what is it that you want actually to say or have a moment to contemplate upon that we haven't talked about so far? The question I haven't asked you, if you were me sitting here talking to you, what would you ask you?
This is and this is going to be a provocative one for you.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
And folks out here might get mad.
Right, right.
But why does your institution exist today? That's the question that every institution has to ask itself. And why is that different? What's differentiated about that? If your case is because we've been around for 150 years, that's why, that's a bad answer. If your case is because we educate black students, that's a bad answer because a whole bunch of people do that now.
That's right.
If your case is because, we're a nurturing environment, a lot of people are providing nurturing now. You've got to answer the question today. What do you do significantly different such that someone should spend on the low end $80,000,
Right.
$20,000 a year times
Sure,
4
right,
years?
exactly,
When you put
right,
tuition,
right,
room, board, all
right,
of that in.
right.
On the high end, $200,000.
That's true.
That's a house.
Wow.
That's a
right.
mortgage.
Exactly.
And so if people are going to put their time and their money into you, why? And if you can't answer that, if your answer is our alumni association, homecoming, the feeling of belonging, those are interesting, but they're not
Right.
compelling enough to make people choose to come to your institution.
That's a
And
good point.
that's the question. This is going to become more and more. Someone used the phrase one time, an educated consumer. More and more high school counselors, parents, students are going to say, here's the big question. When it's all said and done, will I get a good job? If I can't get a good job coming out of here, then I'm not coming. And that's the world we're in. So that will be big
Right,
questions.
right.
Why should somebody come to you?
Wow. How concerned are you about the situation now with the Perkins loan and the phasing it out coming up in June? What impact do you believe it's going to have on HBCUs, if any?
A significant one.
Right.
Listen, I am concerned about it. I am also, I'm torn here.
Right.
I'm torn because I also meet too many kids who come out of school with $150,000 in student loans with a bachelor's degree.
Right.
I know them. These are
Right.
real faces. This
Right.
isn't theoretical.
Sure.
And so while I understand why you want more and more of these loan products available, somebody's got to pay for those loans.
Right.
And this isn't like borrowing from a bank
Right.
where you get a car note, you don't pay it, they come take it.
Right.
You borrow from the federal government. Uncle Sam's going to get his money.
Right.
And so I worry about the shift where everything is, just give them more loans.
Right.
I struggle with that. I understand that,
Sure.
that, and I'm not saying cut off loans.
Gotcha.
No one should hear
Right.
me say
Sure.
that.
Right. Right.
But I think we've got to ensure, especially these children coming out of these fragile communities, that we don't load them on debt such that school doesn't pay off.
Right.
If you come out of school $150,000 in student loans,
Right.
that you have to pay for the next 40 years,
Right.
you really
Gosh.
begin to question whether or not
Yeah.
it was worth going to college.
Right.
So that's something we've got to sort through. I don't know the right number,
Right.
but I know unlimited student loans for a student, irrespective of their major, what school they're going to, their aspirations, does not make plain business sense. It just doesn't make sense.
Johnny Taylor, President, CEO of Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Man, it's been great hanging out here with you. We're
So
here
good
for the
to be
17th Annual Leadership Institute and the 30th Annual Gala.
Yes.
They'll be on the red carpet tomorrow night.
Yes, we
Looking
will.
forward to that, man.
And I will be looking like the most beautiful Kappa you've ever seen in your life.
What you say? All right, fine.
All right,
Bless
fine.
you, man. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I appreciate you.
God bless, man.
Thank you.
It's the
God
very
bless
best.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.